Kojiro, and I welcome everyone to my first impressions of Orient. While I don't want to call this a reaction video itself since I've already watched the episode, it is me telling you how I felt about the episode as we go through. While not truly analysis, I think impression is the best word. So anyway, what is Orient? Orient is Shinobu Otaka's next series, Shinobu Otaka being the mangaka behind the work Magi. Now it's been a long time since Magi has had his anime. I'm a fan of Shinobu Otaka's Magi series. Or, better to clarify, I'm a fan of the first season of the anime. The second season is hit or miss. I feel like they kind of botched the ending. I mean, that has more grievances with the source material than anything else. You know, they were just doing what they could. But definitely that first season of Magi is really where it's at. I love it so much. That series really appealed to me on a high level. So when I heard her new work Orient was getting an anime adaptation, I was psyched to see it. But boy oh boy was I disappointed to see the result. Let's get into it. The very first scene we see is this really poorly done intro animation, where we're just going from frame to frame with a slight fade transition. I'm not sure who decided this was a good idea, but they were obviously wrong. Even more so, the storybook illustration is ditched for the whole series. It would have been something if the whole anime looked like it was like some ukiyo, like traditional Japanese brush painting. Even though that's not really Shinobu Otaka's style, it would have been far more interesting than what we got. So right off the bat, they're not coming out swinging, almost as if this intro segment was an afterthought. We then learn that Oni descended from the skies. I'm assuming they're aliens or something, I'm not sure. I really haven't gotten too far into the manga, but they came and terrorized the land, taking over Japan. And the people who fight against them are known as Bushi, which seems like an offshoot of Bushido. And after that, we jump straight into the opening. It's very unfortunate that The Ice, I think that's how you pronounce the band name, is performing this opening because I really did like their last One Piece opening. I love it. And I'm really jamming with the song, I like it a lot. But the opening itself is filled with a lot of still frames and looping animation just sitting there. I've mentioned this before in my previous video about High Ground and Spices. Your opening should really appeal to your viewer. But also it's the point where you can take a little bit more liberties and break away from whatever the standard visual aesthetic that the show normally has. Especially for shonen, and mainly long-running shonens, their openings really do take a different visual aesthetic. Overall, not a terrible opening, it's just very boring. The animation is very stiff. Our main character Musashi here is picking away at rocks, but at no point do we just see his hair flowing around. They're just still animation frames. And even with all the other characters mining around the area, you just hear the sound effects. Not even like these small characters just picking away. Nothing. The scenes feel lifeless. We're also introduced to how people feel about the Onis in this world. They revere them, and this is solely because the Onis have manipulated the people into believing that they are the gods of their world. Musashi himself carries a weird pickaxe, and it's a scythe, to be honest. It's a giant ass scythe. I've seen people call semantics on this. Oh my god, it's a pickaxe, his weapon is a pickaxe, but the thing looks like a scythe, by all means in nature. That's what we would call a scythe. I understand it functions as a pickaxe, but Jesus. I mean, it is interesting to have a main character use a pickaxe for a weapon. I won't lie, I like the idea, the concept of it. But as we see in the opening, Musashi will later get a sword, so while it's a novel idea, it doesn't stay around for very long. We're then given a flashback of Musashi's childhood, where him and his friend Kojiro are training to become Bushi as well. Kojiro's father is a Bushi as well. He's the one who's been teaching the boys about Bushi and also the real truth of their history. This is where we're introduced to Musashi's goal, is to make the strongest Bushi band of all time and defeat the Oni and liberate Japan. Pretty straightforward character motivation, not too much to really question about it. Now, as far as adaptation wise goes, this one takes a lot of liberties. This original scene in the manga, he's standing outside with a bunch of other characters, and now he's in a classroom in this case. But if you have read any of Shinobu Otaka's works, you'll know that she's very expressive with her art. And that can be a risk, destroying your own art form just to show a certain expression on a character. But Shinobu Otaka does this frequently, and her results are stellar when she does it. Yet for this adaptation, they've taken a generic route when it comes to their character design, not willing to take the risk that Shinobu Otaka does with her art. And because of that, it only looks like a more generic anime compared to everything else around it. Kojiro, After school, Musashi then visits Kojiro, and this scene just reiterates their dream again. Musashi vehemently still wanting to become a Bushi and create his band to stop the Oni, while Kojiro is against that idea. Kojiro, being a son of a Bushi himself, is ostracized by society. In his mind, it's better if Musashi goes out and just becomes a miner instead. That way at least he'll have a future in his life.
それは鬼退治の刀だよ。鬼退治するんだ。
Throughout the episode, we're told that Musashi is very diligent and he's very strong, especially with his so-called sword, even though it's just a pickaxe. Don't worry, it really goes nowhere, this whole pickaxe thing. It's a diversion. But this is slowly setting up that Musashi himself is particularly strong. Kojiro and Musashi have a fight about their dreams. Kojiro saying, just give up. My dad died for nothing. You don't want to die for nothing either, so stop trying to become a Bushi. But Musashi is adamant about his dream of becoming a Bushi. Really general character conflict between two main characters, who at the end of the day we know are going to be traveling together.
俺の本気を証明してやるぜ。まっとうに生きてほしいんだよ。
We're given a little bit more detail about Kojiro's life, about how he's ridiculed and mocked by the townsfolk. Just a few questions pop into my head, like why is he still allowed to hold his sword for any reason? Like a deadly weapon, the weapon's known for attacking other Onis, like why would they allow him to do it? Why would any sort of government that worships the Oni allow him to carry his sword around? It seems ridiculous if they say chain it up. Why not just get rid of his weapon in general?
Kojiro!
Once again, another scene of just a still frame and sound effects.
ここが今日から君たちが働く楽園です。
Moving on to the next scene, we finally see all the characters who are going to become miners for the demons climb up a mountain in order to assume their new dream job. Only to find out that, surprise surprise, Onis are evil. And they're weird monsters. They're not all cat monsters. I've read ahead in the manga. They all have one thing in similarity, is this star, which makes me believe they're aliens by some sense. The mystery behind the Oni itself I'm really into. It's just like, it's a bit ridiculous when you see like a weird cat monster and you're like, huh? Is this what they are? But regardless, you can see that they end up eating people, even though these are the workers that are supposed to be working for them. It's a whole backward system. The Oni don't make any sense. Obviously, they're not in control of the government like people think they are. Now, unfortunately for Musashi, he left his blade outside of the gate. He gave it to one of the gatekeepers. Kojiro back at home notices that Musashi forgets his bag, and his book falls out, seeing that Musashi still had dreams of becoming a Bushi. Now Musashi is getting manhandled by this demon. This is why I want to mention like all that training prior. He said he's been training for 5 years. He's been training with his new pickaxe or scythe or katana, whatever you want to call it. But in my mind, I'm like, how is this dude even just still fighting? I understand he's a shonen pro tag. You didn't have to hurt him up this much for me to believe he wasn't going to win this, at least without his weapon. And just to add on top of it being a weak adaptation, is missing that feeling that Shinobu Otaka is able to give us through her action scenes, especially with her character's eyes. Shinobu Otaka loves playing with the character eyes. Sometimes she'll black out the whole face only to show the character's eyes, looking at someone with contempt. There are times when the anime adaptation can truly surpass the art of its source material. I look at things like early Attack on Titan compared to like what Wit Studio did in season 1. Hell, I would even say the original Maki season. At the same time, an adaptation should at least try to look like its source material in order to stand apart from all of its competition. Musashi is about to be finished off, but not until he gets to shout out his motivation at least one more time. Then we're interrupted by Kojiro just showing up out of nowhere on a motorcycle. The only reason the motorcycle kind of is jarring is because why have the samurai not created guns or any other sort of high-tech technology to take out the demons? Why is this thing here in all other forms of technology still like stuck in the Edo period? Or not Edo period, it's a certain period in Japan, I don't know which one. But you know, during the warring states. How is this? It's a true and blue motorcycle. You can look at everything about it and see motorcycle parts. Does it run off gasoline? Does it run off some sort of magic power? But it doesn't matter. Why is such a thing here? It's very, very jarring. It takes you almost out of the immersion of the show. I would have been fine if he had came in on some sort of magic sword or whatever. But a motorcycle with weird crystals coming out of it? How does that fit in? Again, I really do like the novel idea of the main character having a pickaxe. When he sticks his blade into the ground and they say he's using it as a sheath, while it's a bit far-fetched and doesn't make a lot of sense, I think it's still cool. It's very dumb shonen logic, I mean very, very dumb shonen logic, but it's cool. So I just want to point it out since, like I said, the pickaxe really won't play at all into the future of the series. How in the world did he make this weapon? Because it's able to kill Oni, meaning that it has to be like katana-like. Like, did he make this on his own? Did he forge it? Did he get someone else to forge it? I'm just asking these questions. They really don't matter, so take it as a nitpick. But it's just kind of like a weird thing. Like, he has this weapon capable of killing Oni just out there. No one in the Oni-fearing lands decided to take this away from him or ask, like, where'd you get that thing from? Because it's obviously not a regular pickaxe. And then I would like to add on top of that, Kojiro was able to keep his weapon, because now we can see his weapon can hurt demons. These two characters are anomalies. In a world like this, I would assume anomalies would have been taken care of real soon. So now the Kishin is dropping, like the almighty Oni. I'm like, is this the end of the series already? It's just such a weird thing to do. Normally in your first episode, your protagonists take out one of the thing that they're trying to do. Like Ichigo taking out his first hollow in that episode, or Naruto taking out Mizuki. And then you cement and staple the characters' motivations and their goals through that action. But I feel like this is Shinobu Otaka's weakness after finishing Maki. Like, the pacing is really fast for no real reason. We could have ended the episode with Musashi defeating the first demon, and then him and Kojiro finally setting out to become a Bushi or whatever. But now we're going to be introduced to like the great Kishin, when I feel like it's way too early for that. I have no particular feelings about the ending. I think it's pretty standard. It reminds me of that one Gintama ending though. Forget which one it's called, but I'll put it on the screen right now. It reminds me of that one. So moving on to episode 2, it starts off with a flashback with Kojiro, just trying to cement the point more that the Bushi are ostracized by society. And this allows the audience to question, like, how did society get to this point? It was only 150 years ago when they only took control. So now the question becomes, who are the ones who destroy the perception of Bushi towards Japan? Or Hinomoto in this case. Like, the setup is there, but I just feel like the execution is too shallow. A bunch of warriors carrying around katanas would be far more ostracized than normal. Like, people wouldn't be just throwing trash at them. Or even so, they wouldn't allow Bushi to just clean up trash in the middle of the road. I feel like they'd be either throwing stones or locking them up. So Kojiro is still reluctant about being a Bushi. I kind of wish this moment was just a little heavier, because Musashi just says, you'll get it, sooner or later, you'll just understand why it's so great. Like, I understand the two characters are at odds. I feel like there's some sort of element missing in order for me to really believe this. So then they come across the Kishi, which is a weird bird-like creature. Again, they're very weird creature designs. It reminds me of early Magi. You know, it's kind of subverting your expectations on what you think like a great demon is going to be, but not for long though. And after a little bit of reflection, I was thinking, what about Kojiro doesn't make a lot of sense? And it's that he's still helping Musashi even though he's kind of apathetic to this whole situation. He's still going out of his way to help Musashi attack and kill the Kishin. Musashi, despite cutting it in half, is not able to kill the Kishin, and then it just powers up. As I mentioned before, I did read the manga just to see like the visual differences. This is what it looks like in the anime, the Kishin's true form, and this is what it looks like in the manga. And by far, the manga has such a more menacing appeal to it. Like, the anime's rendition is okay, but it truly does miss out on the emotion that Shinobu Otaka is able to display. So now I'm thinking to myself, like, why are we at this stage already? Like, this really huge boss that hasn't assumed this form in years is now attacking our protagonist? At this point, he should have been like the first enemy they fought. All of this is just set up to introduce a new band of characters coming up soon. After getting wrecked, Kojiro and Musashi are down, and the Kishin wants to take Kojiro's sword, most likely because they only hate swords or katanas by some nature, since it's one of the weapons that can kill them. But Kojiro has a determination to never let go of his sword, even though he himself doesn't believe in the Bushi dream anymore. We're given a short flashback about Kojiro and his father, how his father says, "You're not bad, you're not scum because you were born as a Bushi." All of this is internalized inside of Kojiro for him accepting his Bushi blood. Overall, I think it's pretty good stuff here. It is, though, rather tropey. We're given the display of Kojiro's determination not to let go of his sword by even grabbing the blade. I feel like this scene should have been emphasized more. like the blood dripping from his hands, or even like a really good Sakuya shot here. It's just unfortunate that this is such a shallow adaptation. We've seen plenty of shows that have gotten super popular that overplay tropes. Goblin Slayer, Demon Slayer, Jutsu Kaisen. The list goes on and on and on. All of those shows use tropes. At the same time, those shows have a visual aesthetic or some sort of appeal to it that make them at least entertaining. This anime itself is generally boring to look at and boring to watch, despite if it doesn't screw up at writing its story, albeit the pacing issues that it does suffer from. Like episode 2 being at this point is too early. Kishin, for whatever reason, stabs him in the back, but it doesn't pierce him. I don't understand why the Kishin isn't just killing him. Why is it that the sword is so important to him? Just to eat it? But like, kill the dude. There's no reason to just eat it in front of him. As far as we know, the Kishin are just like random monsters. So Musashi, now awake, decides to go and attack the Kishin, destroying its stomach. I'm more surprised the Kishin just didn't stand up, vertically, and he would have just fell off. I'm sure he could have stabbed into his stomach and hung on for dear life, but still, like, standing up would have helped him. If I compare this Kishin to, like, the enemy of late season 2 of Magi, they're leagues apart. And that was a giant enemy as well. I won't show spoilers since that's like late into season 2. But Shinobu Otaka has shown us before what she can do with large enemies and how much damage they cause. But this Kishin is fairly incompetent. Regardless, Musashi succeeds in cracking open the Kishin and falling into his stomach pit. He then emerges out of the stomach acid. I think this would have been a great scene for like showing the stomach acid burning his skin or whatever. His real determination just to save his friend's sword. To save his pride. Because that's what this is. This is Kojiro's pride. But instead he's just out as if he took a bath in like yellow liquid. That's sus. And with this, Kojiro's character development rises as he understands now what it is to be a Bushi, to slay Oni. And then a flying fortress comes out of nowhere, and this is the fortress of a Bushidan, who conveniently come at the same time where the boys would probably need the most help, since they obviously haven't killed the Kishin yet. But this is where I feel like the writing gets sloppy. Functionally, these characters are only here to just be introduced, and because the main character can't take out the Kishin yet. And once again, the flying motorcycles is just all over the place. If this is the case, if Bushi have such great technology, flying fortresses, or at least fortresses that can move, motorcycles, magic swords, all this kind of stuff, like how are they losing? How are the demons so much more powerful? I just don't understand. The Bushi have all of it cut out for them. They're not some rebels or survivors. As stated, I've read a little further in the manga, Bushi are well armed. Now sometimes the Oni are just really crazy and wacky and they're overwhelming at times. Bushi have their own systems, their own societies and everything. To me, it seems like a more fair battle. It doesn't feel like the portrayal has been done correctly. We then find out that Kishi is obviously not dead. I mean, I think most people don't understand that. But we're also given another moment of just really bad animation. Like, look at it just rising up like this. And this is what I mean, like, this adaptation is just uninteresting. You've got these Bushi guys flying around him, and like, the Kishi isn't swatting around at things. Now, I understand, like, moving a big creature in animation, or at least like the details of it, is difficult, and that's why a lot of studios prefer to use like 3D for big creatures. And I'm sure if it was 3D, we'd have way more people complaining, but like some sort of movement should be happening at this point in time. I'll admit, this shot of the Kishin is very cool, but once again, I would like to just call comparison to like what their panel looked like in the manga. We're introduced to a unique character quirk of Musashi, is that he didn't want this Kishin to be stolen from this band of Bushi. Like, he would consider it them stealing the kill. It was supposed to be their first target. Even though, I mean, let's be honest here, they're definitely underprepared to take out such a thing. We're then introduced to the Takeda Natora band, a very blue cast of characters. Again, this reminds me of Sinbad and his gang, which Otaka I think was just taking a step too far. She was jumping the shark. She should have introduced these guys way earlier. I understand now, after reading it, why they're introduced. They're to give Musashi a little bit more of a motivation to become like the best Bushi band of all time. But some sort of hinting towards Bushi bands still being around and existing should have been noted, because in my mind, it sounds like Bushi were just not around, or they're like all rebels fighting together in like small bands of guerrilla warfare or something like that. It didn't sound like Bushi had a set military and like enough might to fight demons. Because just looking at Naotora's band, it looks like they can handle anything they want. Also, I'll mention it because a lot of people like to mention it. 3D models in the background right there. But regardless, there's just too many characters to introduce within 2 episodes. A whole group of people and then our 2 protagonists. Let's just use the comparison of Magi because I like Magi. The first 3 episodes had a very small cast of characters, each of them playing a pivotal role in the story up to that point. But these characters generally have no business being here right now. Our focus shouldn't be on a brand new cast of characters, and albeit a bit more interesting characters too, because Sinbad in Magi was a fan favorite. People love Sinbad, even to the point he got his own side manga with an anime adaptation. And now Tora kind of feels like that Sinbad character again. And with that, the episode ends. Honestly, I wouldn't watch this series weekly, and I feel like the manga has its own issues as well. This is definitely like, I'll finish it and binge it when all the episodes are dropped. Its premise is interesting, execution is flawed, and the adaptation is downright lazy. If we do a little bit of a biography of ACGT Studio, we'll see they haven't really made too many hit animes out there. Dai's Irai is being one of the biggest ones, and Duel Masters, some Initial D is there as well, Twaru Kakaku no Accelerator, and then Freezing, which Freezing is one of my favorite, most least liked animes. Like, I don't like it, but I sort of do. It's like a guilty pleasure, if you will. It's a bad anime, but for whatever reason, I have a softness in my heart for it. So overall, I personally wouldn't recommend Orient. If you're a fan of Magi, I would say read the manga first and then decide if you want to actually spend time, dedicate time, I should say, to watching the anime. I feel like Orient itself has kind of an identity issue. I can't talk about spoilers. I read up to chapter 40 or 50. I really don't remember anymore. I just spent all night reading chapters. When I compare Orient to Magi, Magi takes the cake. It's kind of a similar feeling I felt about Soul Eater to Fire Force. Fire Force itself plays it very, very safe, and I feel like Orient plays itself safe too. It doesn't take the risk that Magi did, and I think that's what it really comes down to. Shinobu Otaka's art style is risky at best when she decides to deform her characters on a consistent basis, or twist their faces, or even introduce abstract art in manga. Orient itself isn't willing to take the risk of looking out of place, and because of that, it falls in line with all the other generic anime out there. I feel the one job of an anime adaptation is to look good, and Orient fails at doing so. With all that said and done, I'll see you guys next time. I'll do a few more anime impressions of this season of anime, and then I'll try to go backwards and see what else I want to do anime impressions on. If you guys do want me to watch Orient, just let me know, and I'll make videos on it. I think that's like the best way to go about it, because generally I probably won't watch this anime until it's done. But of course I'll be doing more impressions coming soon. So I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.